I have cerebral palsy and I am a spastic quadriplegic. However you arrive at your disability is a journey in itself and completely different experiences. Able-bodied, non-disabled people need to take accountability for their lack of knowledge. It's not my job
to always be the
as
teacher.
a disabled person to educate you.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of infantilization of disabled people. I experience that all the time.
Sure.
So many people call me sweetie and I almost die. So I think my parents have always had high expectations of me as a disabled person.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. You have to achieve things every day.
Yeah.
It's about having an expectation of like a standard of participating in your existence.
Exactly.
That's important. Apparently we as like a wheelchair depot unit are like a threat to the safety of every other runner. We are very good at giving pushback.
Yeah.
They said no, we said yes. They said no, we said but yes.
Yeah.
They said no and we got lawyers.
Yeah.
And I think I've always been that disabled person who's like occupying random spaces and then people are like, why are you here?
Welcome to Navigating the Twenties. You are with me, Zinhle Novazi. In today's episode, I sit down with the inspiring Chaeli Mycroft. She is the co-founder of the Chaeli Campaign. She's also an accomplished author, activist, and speaker. Together, we dive into the powerful theme of being unapologetically able. Chaeli fiercely shares her journey of existing loudly as a disabled person, emphasizing the importance of taking up space in a world that often marginalizes those with disabilities. Through candid anecdotes and heartfelt insights, she sheds light on the challenges faced by disabled athletes. In this raw and unfiltered conversation, Chaeli addresses the nuances of being an ally to disabled individuals, offering invaluable advice on how able-bodied individuals can be more sensitive and supportive. With unwavering honesty, Chaeli invites us to examine our own behaviors and attitudes, encouraging us all to be part of a more inclusive and understanding society. So don't miss out on this empowering conversation that will leave you feeling inspired and motivated to navigate your own 20s with greater empathy and understanding. But before we begin, please don't forget to get yourself a copy of Chaeli's book, Unapologetically Able. Or perhaps you might want to sign up for her 8-week virtual course called Active Living. And might I remind you that she currently has a masterclass running, which I urge you all to sign up for. But over to our conversation with Chaeli Mycroft.
Hey, Chaeli.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. It's
Beautiful.
it's been a while.
A little bit.
I mean, like we last properly engaged, I think actually we were at the event that was hosted by
The British High Commission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love how you finished my sentence.
You know.
And I really actually think I only got to properly know you when we started serving in house comm.
Yes.
Although we did like our Bachelor of Social Science, I think you and I had like similar modules together, which was pretty cool. And just for the benefit of the people in our community from Navigating the 20s, if I had to ask you to describe yourself the way your friends, the way your mom would describe you, who is Chaeli?
This is a deep question to start with, I guess. So I'm Chaeli. I am 28 years old now. I am a disabled person. For those who can't see me. I have cerebral palsy and I am a wheelchair user.
Yeah.
And I've always been a disabled person. So that's my life perspective.
Yeah.
I think with my disability, I'm also like, I really want to have a full life and kind of determine what that means for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched on quite a few things. So like with people that are not familiar with cerebral palsy, can you speak us through what that actually means?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
So cerebral palsy is a super interesting disability because it's such a broad diagnosis. So technically, I have cerebral palsy and I am a spastic quadriplegic.
Okay.
So for me, my CP manifested in all of my appendages.
Yeah.
So quad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my CP makes my muscles stiff.
Okay.
So that's my version. But there's so many versions.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes it really interesting to be a disabled person and to try to understand disability in any way because it is so vast and reaching. But essentially, cerebral palsy is a form of brain damage.
Yes.
A lack of oxygen to the brain, where that lack of oxygen occurred determines the manifestation of your CP. Did that make sense?
That makes absolute sense.
Cool.
And when you say that, like, members of our community, maybe some have a similar journey to you in the sense that they were born with a disability, or some may have gotten into a car accident or gotten a disability later on in life. How do you find the meaning behind living a full life with a disability? Like if somebody's feeling discouraged right now and they can't see how they can live a full life, like what advice or what kind of experiences have you had that you can comfort somebody in that position?
So I think that however you arrive at your disability is a journey in itself. You know, and completely different experiences. I've always lived with my disability, so I didn't have to get used to it.
Yeah.
I didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
When you gain your disability through something traumatic, it's a very different process that you go through. But at the same time, I think there are similarities, right? I think there's this perception that I've also perpetuated it a little bit in my own existence, and I'm trying to not do that as much, is that if you have a disability, you have to be this positive, energetic, enthusiastic overcomer of struggle.
Yeah.
You know?
And how tiring is that persona to keep up?
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I've just realized in my journey that you don't have to. If I'm having a really shitty day, and a really hard body day, it's okay. And it's okay to be you know what? My body's not cooperating with me today.
Exactly.
So the 18 things that I had on my to-do list, maybe we bring it down to 8.
Yes.
Or 2.
Yeah.
Or we change the to-do list entirely and we say, you know what, we're not doing anything today.
Exactly.
We're taking a day.
Yeah.
And that's okay as well. But we need to have the people around us be okay with that as well.
I think that perception, you're so right, having to keep up a persona because people expect you to be positive and to always be strong and to always we need to create that space that it's okay to exist in the realm of different emotions, that's literally how life goes on about. And Chaeli, if I on that topic, what are your icks or the things that really make you angry about able-bodied people in South Africa?
In South Africa?
Yeah. We'll play it around. As a traveled person, I'm sure you've got...
I I think there's a lot to talk about.
Let me just qualify my question. So, like, what are we doing wrong, and how are we failing people that are disabled or people living with different disabilities?
Yeah. So I think that it's really about how disabled people are positioned in society.
Okay.
I think there's so much wisdom and skill and knowledge that you gain as a disabled person that's not recognized because it's not mainstream.
Sure.
And so when I come into a room, I have 17 solutions already to problems that you haven't even thought of. Right? Like, I am
your whole lived experience.
I'm so invested in logistics. It's not funny. Like, and I think there's so much of that that's just gone unrecognized. That there's so much of a person that you don't see. Yeah. And there are a couple other things that I'm like, please, can we stop doing this? Where people say to me all the time, oh, it's so great that you're not defined by your disability.
Is that insulting?
So, to me.
Yes.
Because disability is complicated and beautiful and complex and nuanced and all those things. Yeah. For me, I am very much defined by my disability. Yes. You, not you, but like you. Yeah. The general you. Yes. Like, you only think that I can't be defined by it because you're seeing it as a negative
Fair
thing.
point, yeah.
So if you think that being defined by my disability is bad, that's not my problem.
Exactly. That's a me problem.
That's your problem. Right? Yeah. So like, and we don't make enough room to have those discussions.
That's
because
so true.
How long did that take for me to say that to you?
Jeez.
And like, I think it's people. Here's the point. Okay. I think able-bodied, non-disabled people need to take accountability for their lack of knowledge. Yes. It's not my job
to always be the
as
teacher.
A disabled person to educate you.
Yeah. Because how exhausting is it for you to play educate when I can actually do my research?
As an activist, yes, that's my job. Yeah. And I will educate you. Yes. But as a person, it's not my job. Yeah. If I'm in a mall and you are in an elevator with me and you're like, what's your disability? But I'm busy.
Do people ask you that?
So many people.
Oh, no.
And you know, but this is also the thing, is that privacy is an interesting thing. Yeah. I don't have it.
I figured, because when you just said somebody can walk up to you in the lift and be like, what's your disability?
So I don't have it. Yeah. Like, but in any real sense, like in the mainstream sense of understanding what privacy is, I'm okay with that most of the time. Yeah. I have a disability that requires people are in my space. Yeah. Right? So I've had to come to terms with that. Yeah. And I don't think I really came to terms with it. It just always has been like it's standard. Yeah. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing when people respect the fact and understand that it's something I don't have. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah.
And so, like, I choose to be very open about my disability. And I'm like, hey, super disabled person over here, how are you? Yeah. But I also, like, that's not everybody's experience.
Chaeli, can I ask you a question that I think, well, for me, I think there's a societal problem, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, or because in society, like from the time we start like nursery school to primary school, we don't engage with people with different disabilities. So there are, I do understand that there are kids that have special needs and need to be in specialized schools. But I think if we created societies where there was a proper integration from nursery school, that it would allow people to naturally engage and interact with people with disabilities. Because what happens is like basically people with different disabilities are put in a different category, and maybe you might interact with some of them when you go to university in the workplace. And I find that people that have not had that exposure, so if you don't have anyone in your family who's living with a disability, then people are awkward. They don't know how to engage. They don't know what to do because it's literally like they've never had that experience. So do you think that is problematic in itself, or
It is problematic.
Thank you.
So a couple thoughts. So our NPO, the Chaeli Campaign, we have an inclusive preschool.
Yes.
And it's awesome.
Ooh.
It proves that people learn to be exclusive.
Yeah.
They learn to be discriminatory because they can also learn to be inclusive.
Exactly.
And I think there's this excuse in society that including people is hard.
No, it's not.
It's not hard. It's not hard.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my mom and I have these car conversations all the time where it's like we're planning how to save the world and stuff. And they go between like, it's not that hard. But I also share it with other people.
I need to ask you around the skills of dealing with that. Like when you walk into a room and then people are awkward or they didn't expect to encounter you, and how you...
I think it depends on my mood and my caffeine intake. And like how much sleep I've had. But I tend to lean towards discomfort. Not mine, other people.
Yeah.
So I kind of and it's always with humor, like I'm gonna just wait for you.
Yeah. Because technically it's my discomfort's got nothing to do with you.
And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm just waiting for you to realize what you just said.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you a minute.
Oh wow, that's
or I just don't like. I think that there's a lot of infantilization of disabled people. I experience that all the time.
Sure.
So many people call me sweetie and I almost die. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. And people call me Baba all the time.
What?
It happens a lot.
You're a 28-year-old grown woman, right?
So it happens a lot at like airports and things.
Oh gosh.
So that's interesting. And when people change their pitch a lot and they speak louder. And they come closer. And I kind of really like to counter those things with like somebody will ask like a dumb question.
Yeah.
Which is like something that you would ask like a toddler, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just not recognize it.
Yeah.
And then I'll say something like political or like something that's like so far from what they thought I was gonna say that it kind of shocks people into an awareness.
Yes.
But sometimes you just have to exist in spaces to have them adjust.
Yeah.
You know?
And how do you not let those experiences like dim your confidence levels or like go like tap into your being, like where you start to feel.
It does.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing to have people know as well, is that like your reaction to me is being received.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know that I'm making you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And sometimes I care.
Yeah.
Not because I'm making you uncomfortable, but because that hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
But like, and sometimes I don't care. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to exist very loudly in this space.
Yeah.
And that will be fine.
Yeah.
And like, people must figure it out. Like, it's not my issue.
Yeah.
I've gotten better with like owning spaces.
Yeah.
And owning like disabled moments instead of being like embarrassed by them.
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, cool.
Yeah.
I remember being in I think you were in that lecture when we were in a lecture and like my leg spasmed or something.
Yeah.
And all of my 500 stationery things fell off my desk and they like rolled down the stairs.
Yeah. It was.
And I was like,
Yeah.
cool. Can somebody get that for me, please?
Yeah.
I've given presentations before where like a gust of wind came and my notes flew off my
Oh my goodness.
off my desk, and moments where like the mic has fallen off my face. And stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to just lean into it then. You have to just be like, we all just saw that happen. Like,
Exactly.
I don't know what I'm saying. Can somebody please
Pick up my notes. Yeah.
can someone just get that for me, please? And like, can you fix the mic? We'll just wait. Like,
Yes.
we'll be here.
Yes.
We'll wait together.
Exactly.
Like, it's fine.
Yeah. And Chaeli, do you feel heard? Like in general, in society, do you feel like your voice? I mean, you're a public speaker and you're known, and you do a lot, and like you're present on social media.
Yeah.
Do you feel heard in society? So I guess I'm asking it more as like a philosophical question than a.
I think I feel heard by the people who care. So sometimes I think it feels a little bit, I don't know if this is the right word, but like a little bit echo chambery. I don't think that's the right word. It's more like speaking to the converted.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like you go to conferences that are disability conferences.
Yeah.
And then you speak to people who care about disability.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to an economics conference where people care about capitalism.
Exactly.
And you're saying, hey, disability is a smart move for business.
Exactly.
Like, that's not always where the spaces are made available, you know? So in that way, I don't feel super heard because it's like you have to sort of, I get really frustrated by people who say, you have to have the heart for disability. My activism, I think it's more like a little bit secretive.
Yeah.
In that, like, people kind of don't know that I'm activisting. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, I guess.
Like, we'll just be having a conversation.
Yes.
And you'll say something.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, why do you think that?
So now do you get the person to think and
and
question?
then I'm like, you just... For me, the activism had to take a different form.
Yeah.
Because I can't go to protests, and I mean, I can.
Yeah.
But we stand an anxious queen over here, so that's just not...
Yeah, it's not going to work.
It's not. And, like, protests often turn violent, and then you're like... well,
like you're running for your life,
You know? So that when I'm not feeling up to it...
Yeah, there are other
on
people.
Thursday, and some guy we walk past makes an inappropriate comment or something, they can be like, hey, bro...
What's up with that?
Inappropriate.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for people who are not disabled to also claim responsibility for making change.
Exactly.
You know, because it's not... I don't agree with this whole concept that, like, you can't talk about an issue if you're not experiencing it personally.
Yeah.
I can talk about issues. I can be an ally in really beautiful
That's true.
ways.
Allyism is a thing,
It's important.
Yeah.
You don't have to take over the whole conversation, but it's important that you're a part of it.
Exactly.
Because if you're not a part of it, you're a problem.
Yeah. No, I think you like, that's really important because we need more allies. But even in the conversation, if you're an ally, you need to be like an educated one so that you don't, because people often come into the space and then you overwhelm the space and like you're asking uneducated questions. And I'm not saying that in the conventional.
But I think there needs to be space for uneducated questions.
Yes.
So my friend group.
Yeah.
A lot of them have asked inappropriate questions.
Yes.
But with like the want to learn.
Yes,
you know, and the knowledge that they're maybe not being super appropriate.
Yeah.
Right? So like we as activists and people who want to create change in understanding, how do we change how people understand something if we're not willing to share what that experience is?
Fair enough.
We're creating unfair expectations of allies when we're not educating them.
That's true.
Effectively.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like there might be like spaces where it should be open. Like I understand, like there should be spaces where somebody can ask like highly inappropriate questions. What would be deemed, so that we like just deal with that up front. Because like if I compare disability to, like, let's say, being a black woman in South Africa, and some people are curious, or people who come from backgrounds where it has been previously like racist and they're trying to deal with the racism and they want to ask, and I'm like, there has to be certain spaces, so like you don't just like blurt and say, oh, are all black people X, Y, and Z.
You can't just ask me in the middle of a pick and pay queue. How do you feel about being black?
Exactly. I imagine.
Like, that's not the moment.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But like there are moments.
Yes.
And my existence is very much built on relationships.
Exactly.
So I'm an investor in that way. I invest deeply in the people around me.
Yeah.
And I've reached a point of like, I kind of take the approach of, hi, Katie.
Yeah.
Here's all my business.
Yeah.
How ready are you for this?
Yeah.
Are you ready? If not, okay, cool. I'll see you later. But like, if you are ready, then let's go on some cool adventures and do some stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so I think me having that attitude towards it makes the friends and people around me more powerful allies. Because they've been given space to be confused about how they support me.
Yeah.
And once I like explain my understanding and my perspective on it, people are like, oh wow, I never thought about it like that. And how could they?
Exactly, because unless you open up the space.
Have it. You don't have that perspective.
Yeah.
And so if you don't share your perspective, and then you get grumpy about people not understanding your perspective.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. You're absolutely right with that. And Chaeli, if I can ask, coming to the Chaeli campaign, how has your experiences or propelled you to then use the Chaeli campaign as a vehicle? Yeah.
So the Chaeli campaign, we started 19 years ago, which is insane to me.
So you were like, what, is it 6? My math is bad. 9. Yeah.
And that's crazy to me. Like, I don't remember what our life was before the Chaeli campaign.
Wow.
In like the best way.
Yeah.
Like obviously we were still advocating and like activisty or whatever, but like I think what's really beautiful about our work and our organization is the vastness.
Yeah.
And because it kind of evolved based on what we knew were my needs.
Yeah.
It was not a selfish way at all. It was like, my parents want me to live a full life.
Yes.
To access all aspects of life, right? What is required for disabled people to access all aspects of life?
Yeah.
Let's build programs around making those things happen.
Yeah.
So that's how our work kind of evolved.
Sure.
And that's a very different way of approaching our sector.
Yeah.
People get very confused. They're like, but what disability do you serve? And we're like, all of them.
Exactly.
And they're like, what service do you provide?
Yeah.
We're like, all of them. And people are like, how are you sleeping? We're like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's just, you can't support a disabled person like half-assed. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't give a wheelchair
and then
or
leave the
a
person.
hearing aid and then not educate the people around them of the importance of that tool. Like, you can't speak for like educating disabled people and then not educate the non-disabled people around them.
Exactly, because they form the support system. And Chaeli, if I can ask, do you think, so maybe there's people in our community that also like studied, I think you studied up to an MPhil, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
I tried the PhD, but I tried.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna become doctor soon enough. The road
not soon enough. Hey, I tried.
Yeah.
And after lots of like soul searching and stuff, maybe a little bit of a breakdown. But I had this realization in therapy that I was pushing for the PhD because I wanted to prove that I could get one and not because I truly wanted one for myself.
Sure. What a realization that was. And you kind of mourn the death of that future, that expected future.
I could be a doctor right now if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I don't want to.
And that's okay. Right?
And that's fine.
Exactly.
I don't have to be the overachieving disabled person.
Yeah.
And that's internalized ableism that I'm working on. You know, like when I make decisions, it's like, am I doing this because I want to do it or because somebody thinks I can't do it?
Sure.
Which is an interesting kind of
that is so
internal dynamic.
I'm having like a light bulb because it does mean you could either chase the expectation of always trying to prove people and then you lose sight of who you are and like what your purpose, your vision for your holistic life
and having those boundaries with yourself is really hard. Being like, actually, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And like saying that out loud to somebody.
That takes guts.
That's hard.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you cry. I think I cried.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go tell my mom that I'm dropping out of like doctoral school. So I think my parents have always had high expectations of me as a disabled person.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
I think too often people are like, oh, but you're disabled, so you don't need to achieve things.
Exactly.
And like you get celebrated for
mediocrity or not doing stuff. Yeah.
And if you need to not be doing stuff right now, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like you have to achieve things every day.
Yeah.
It's about having an expectation of like a standard of participating in your existence.
Exactly.
That's important.
I think there's a whole conversation to be had about like parenting a child who's disabled and like how important the role of like having a support.
About that.
We need to we'll have to bring your mama to the podcast. But Chaeli, you recently became an author. Please tell us about your book and where we can get it firstly and then why you felt the need to write a book.
So I've always said for like a billion years, I'm like, oh, when I write a book, it's going to have this in it. And then we had a global pandemic and I stopped university and I was like, I need to have a win right now. And
Yeah.
I've been working on the book for like a little bit, and so that came out in 2021.
Yes.
And it's called Unapologetically Able.
Interesting title.
Yes. And a lot of people think that that's anti-disabled, and it's really not.
Yeah.
It's about claiming the ability and the skills and the lessons and everything I've learned within my disabledness and with it.
Yeah.
So it's not avoiding disability. It's really bringing everything to the fore and saying, okay, what is actually happening right now?
Yeah.
This is chaos.
Yeah.
Welcome to my chaos. This is how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I don't love that happened. But like, we learned some stuff.
Yeah.
So my book is a very honest reflection of what it's been like to be a disabled person.
Yeah.
And some of the questions I have, some of the questions that other people have.
Yeah.
Like, and just like stories. And some of them are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And hilarious.
Yeah.
And some of them are really hard to read, and they were hard to write.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what makes it cool, is that people can see the ebbs and flows of life as a disabled person.
Makes sense. And where can we get the book?
So the book is on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's also on my website if people want to get it locally in South Africa.
And just give people your website so that...
My website is chaeli.co.za.
Yeah, simple.
Yeah. And I'm just excited to share it and have people relate to the book in ways that I didn't expect. I wrote the book as an outflow of just like...
Yeah.
I need people to understand a little bit more. It wasn't built as like I'm going to teach people about disabledness and how to work with me. And and the response, I didn't expect it to be relatable.
Really?
I don't know why. And then I had people who have completely different disabilities to me sending me messages, making me ugly cry about how my book made them feel seen and understood. Okay. And that was a lot on a Tuesday morning. And that's such a gift, I feel, to have been able to create a platform for that to happen, to connect with people in that way. I had a mom who has like a 4-year-old disabled son who's in a wheelchair, I think, and it's like the best story. She sent me a message saying that she loved my book so much. Yeah. And her biggest takeaway from the book was... I'm like, I write a whole book and this is your takeaway. So there's like 3 pages of a story where I talk about how we went out one night and got like leglessly drunk. Yes. And my friends had to carry me down the stairs because we didn't think about how we were going to get down. Or like, we didn't think about my disability when we chose the place. And it's a whole ridiculous story. Yeah. About like a drunken night out. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
which are stories that are untold most of the time. Like, when do you hear that? Like
you don't talk about it.
Exactly.
And her reaction to that was, I hope that my son will build friendships where he can go out and have drunken nights.
Exactly, because that's how like you. No, but it's a beautiful.
I was like, I love that so much. That my drunken evening was like a milestone, like in your expectations for your son of like living a full life. Exactly, right? And like that's amazing. To me, that's what people take. Exactly. And now I look at the book as something where you can read it and not take anything from it. And that's fine. I had a lot of anxiety about like how people were gonna receive the book before I put it out.
Yeah.
And then I put it out and suddenly I was like, doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's out there now.
It's there.
Yeah.
I said what I said.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
people won't like it or not.
Yeah.
Not everyone's gonna like it because I'm spicy, you know? Like it's not this pretty like picture of a disabled. It's like sometimes it's shit.
Yeah.
And you have to talk about that so people can understand and help you through the shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh gosh, that is beautiful. I think we need to call you back and have like an analysis of the book, because I think there's some incredible stories to be shared from that. But Chaeli, I think another powerful thing that you've done is kind of dispelling the space and the connotations of being sporty and disabled. I mean, first of all, like we had this conversation earlier where I was like, I'm trying to pluck up the courage to be like you and do Comrades. You were the first person in a wheelchair to finish Comrades, right? Or So how was that experience? And actually just talk us through maybe 1 or 2 or 3 key events in your life this year that you've done, and like what you were hoping to achieve for that, for your personal self and as somebody who's an activist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm inherently an active person.
Yeah.
I cannot, as ironic as it sounds, I can't sit still.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be doing like 5 things to feel like a productive person.
Yeah.
I'm working on that. But I love being active because it's my vessel of like working with my body and my body working with me. It's like how we can I always refer to myself as a we for like a weird like disability thing, which is me.
It's your wheelchair. Disability. Yeah. Oh, and your disability, not your chair. Okay.
So like we have to negotiate sometimes, right? So like we navigate life together.
Yeah.
And I love how when I really got into the fitness stuff, it was like a huge thing to me to trust people, to do these crazy things with me.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't experienced that before. But like, we learned so much. So I started with cycling.
Yeah.
And then we climbed Kilimanjaro.
That is a story you have to tell, because
I don't know how we got there. It was like we were kidding, and then somebody took us seriously.
Yeah.
And then booked it, and we were like,
oh shit. Yeah.
I'm like, you're supposed to understand when we are not being serious about things. And here we are on this mountain, like, okay.
Hectic.
It was incredible, like the most incredible experience of my whole life. And then we took on Comrades.
Yes.
Which was a whole thing, because they had rules that were discriminatory.
Really? The ASA rules?
No, the Comrades rules.
Just in the Comrades, okay.
So the rule was no, we so many people involved, and Comrades said no because of safety, and we said but yes because.
What about safety? I'm so shocked.
Apparently we as like a wheelchair duo unit are like a threat to the safety of every other runner.
But like 2 Oceans, all the other races.
Oh no, like there's been also a lot of ableism in that, but like because it's too far. We are very good at giving pushback.
Yeah.
they said no, we said yes. They said no, we said but yes. And they said no, and we got lawyers.
My word. For it to get to that point.
Essentially, that's what happened. And we were like, you don't have a constitutional right to do this.
Yeah.
So they've changed the rules now. That rule doesn't exist anymore. There are like sub things that we're still working on them.
Yeah.
Not expecting different things from disabled people.
Yeah.
But it's a journey.
Chaeli, I'm going to put it out there. Like, I'm so glad that someone like you exists in this space, because it now makes sense why we've never had wheelchair runners or people with other disabilities.
But there have been blind people running forever.
Yeah.
It's just
has there been blind people in Comrades?
Much. You don't have to say that you're blind.
Okay. Fair enough. So you would have to exclude your
You don't have to disclose anything.
But is that not worse? Because now it's almost like you can't even bring your full self to the race to get.
I don't know. I think like I'm not a blind person, so I've never had the experience of like being included, like discreetly.
Yeah. Yeah.
My inclusion always has to be overt.
Exactly.
I'm overt.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I can't comment on that, but I remember it being super hostile.
Yeah.
In the beginning when we started, like the first year, it was wild. Like there were officials there who were like watching, and even like the runners were just confused. It was like, why are you here? Like this is not where wheelchair athletes are.
Okay.
And so that was an interesting day. And now, like 6 years later, people don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah.
Because when you constantly show up.
Exactly. Then people, it becomes the norm.
It becomes standard. Yeah. And people change their understanding of it. And so it was a struggle for us a couple, 2-3 years. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
But now we get to the end of the race and we get flowers like everybody else.
Exactly.
And so that's like been a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Now, and we had to do that, and I think there was a fear that it would be successful. Because I think that exists a lot where people are like, but what if it works? And people get excited about it. And then we have 400 wheelchairs.
Which I think would be phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it also matters because if representation in the sense that another child looks at you and goes, it's also possible for me. But if there's no form of that representation, no one's there to validate that dream.
And I think I've always been that disabled person who's like occupying random spaces, and then people are like, why are you here?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why not?
Exactly.
Like, I can be here, and like you can see me here as with my disability, not in spite of it. And that's been a really long lesson for myself as well. And I don't want people to think that I'm just like super evolved and like understand everything about my I have things where I'm like, why do I feel that way?
So you're still learning about your body on the go.
I'm learning. Like every day you learn, and I think especially with like CP, you can learn something and then your body decides to sort of unlearn it or like make a different route.
Yeah.
And you have to be responsive to that. And that's not always easy. And I think that I want to share that with other people. And that process of figuring that out. And that's what my course is.
So we need to definitely sign up for those courses. Yes. Or jump on the course quickly, please. We want to know.
So I'm launching a course in October.
Okay.
It's called Active Living Legacy. And it's all about figuring out what your version of an active life looks like.
Yeah.
because there are too many stereotypical ideas of you're only active if and you're only active when, that we're leaving out so much activity and so much investment in our lives where you can claim being an active person when you choose to be an active person.
Sure.
But figuring out what that means for yourself is an interesting journey. So we, through the course, it's 8 weeks long.
Okay.
Online.
Perfect. So then you can access it from anywhere.
All the places.
Yeah.
And we go through like redefining active, redesigning able, and then we build what your active living legacy looks like.
Wow.
So I'm super excited to share that with people and to have sort of my lived experience be more serving for other people.
Yeah. Perfect. We've got one last question.
Yes.
And that's around dating. Are you currently seeing anyone?
I'm not.
And also, I want to know, like, so you're like in your late 20s.
Yeah.
How's navigating
dating? God, it's a complete myth.
Yeah.
I don't think my, like, experience is different to people in the sense that, like, it's a myth.
Yeah.
And, like, you end up in situationships and you're like, oh, okay, cool. And, like, things happen and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And, like, that, I think that part of it is the same. Like, the anxiety of that is the same.
The anxiety of dating apps.
It's the same.
Yeah.
I have a different anxiety and like now I'm in a more like self-aware, like self-affirming, confident space. So I think a couple years ago I was like, oh my God, do they know that I'm disabled?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah, because you have to go and
It's like, yes.
Yeah.
With all of the other stuff that is cool about me, you know, like it's not.
So it's our podcast tradition that the guest towards the end gives our community like 2 or 3 essential pieces of advice. So obviously our community is like people in their 20s that are still trying to figure it out. If there are 2 key crucial pieces of advice that you'd give somebody who's navigating their 20s, what would you say?
I think my first piece of advice would be take a deep breath. And it's okay to take a second to just exist and not be figuring it out the whole time. To just be in that space and figure out whether that's what you want to, if you want to be in that space. And I think my second piece of advice would be to go on a journey to find the people who feed the version of you that you want to be, and hold tight to those people. And it's okay to let go of the people that don't do that for you and not feel guilty about that, because you are powerful, and for you to be as powerful as you are made to be, you need to find your people. And that's cool to do that when you realize that you have that. Take a minute to be like, that was cool.
And that's it for our 6th episode. Thank you for being a part of this growing community. And if this conversation has touched you or helped you in any way, consider sharing it with a friend, colleague, or even a family member. You can also support the show by subscribing to the podcast and giving us a rating on your podcast platform. If you're looking for a place to debrief about Chaeli's story, follow Navigating the 20s on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Remember that the next LinkedIn and Substack newsletter will be out today, which is the 8th of November. This has been Navigating the 20s. We will be back with more in 2 weeks' time on the 22nd of November.